Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for coming to my presentation today. My name is Anthony Asuncion, and I'm the App Growth Consultant Team Lead in Americas for AppTweak. Now, as you all know, the App Store is becoming more and more competitive, and a great way to expand your app's visibility and maximize its reach is to leverage seasonal events. But your seasonal strategy really needs to be well thought out and very planned. I always say, the seasonal battle is won early. So today, I'm going to be discussing how you can turn your seasonal events into growth with App Store optimization and Apple Ads. But first, let's quickly get the marketing slides out of the way. We're AppTweak. We're the industry's most comprehensive App Store marketing and intelligence platform. You can increase organic visibility with seasonal and metadata research. You can scale Apple Ads with paid and organic data. You can reply to reviews, monitor trends with market research, study your competitors' A/B tests, metadata, creative updates, report on your impact, and a lot more all on one platform. We're trusted by over 2,000 mobile leaders and have won several G2 awards this spring. And we also have campaign management for Apple Ads, and we're so excited to announce that we're officially an Apple Ads partner. So you can do advanced keyword research to streamline your keyword discovery. We have App Store optimization, ad and CPP intelligence, so you can make more informed decisions. And we have smart automations with rules and presets, so you can optimize your return on ad spend and improve your workflows. So once again, my name is Anthony Asuncion. I'm the App Growth Consultant Team Lead. At this point, I have over 10 years of digital marketing and experience and 5 years of App Store marketing experience, and that makes me feel really old. But I've worked with apps and games in pretty much every vertical you can imagine. I love apps, food, and sports, and go Warriors. So for today's presentation, I'm going to start by discussing TurboTax's successful seasonal strategy, then go over the Apple Ads and App Store optimization growth loop. Then I'll let you know some more successful seasonality examples, go over how you can conduct your seasonality research and finalize your strategy, let you know how you can use Apple Ads and ad variations for your seasonal strategy, and last but not least, I'll go over reporting so you know how to report on all the impact to your bosses because it's unfortunately something we all have to do. But first, this session is independently conducted by AppTweak and is not sponsored, endorsed, or affiliated with Apple Ads. All content shared, including any references to third-party brands or entities, has been generated exclusively by AppTweak for educational purposes. Any insights, analysis, or statements are those of AppTweak alone and do not reflect any views or recommendations of Apple Ads. Okay, so the reason why I picked TurboTax is because they are inherently a very seasonal app. And also, who doesn't love talking about taxes? But as I mentioned earlier, your seasonal strategy has to be very well thought out and planned. And I think this graphic here is a perfect example of the type of impact you could potentially see from a well thought out seasonal strategy. What we're seeing here is the estimated daily downloads for tax-related keywords over the previous 3 years. And we can see TurboTax has significantly increased their visibility for tax-related keywords over the previous 3 years. And this will obviously have a huge impact during the 2025 tax season. And my hypothesis is I think this happened because each year, TurboTax implements a well-thought-out and coordinated seasonal strategy. For example, for the 2025 tax season, they implemented their first in-app event all the way back in December of last year, well before their competitors were implementing any of their seasonal strategies. And as I'll get to shortly, they really dominated the 2025 tax season. I also think this is a great example of why you should implement a seasonal strategy, or at least be aware of your seasonal events, because you don't want to get to a point where your competitors have a significant seasonal advantage over your app. So let's start by discussing TurboTax's Apple Ads strategy. But first, let me go over what share of voice is. Share of voice is an AppTweak metric that estimates the percentage of times an app's ad will show up when a given keyword is searched. And whether it was a competitor, branded, or generic term, TurboTax had a significant share of voice advantage over their competitors. As I just showcased, they really increased their organic visibility for tax-related keywords over the previous 3 years. And so you're really seeing that paid and organic visibility here, right? You search tax, and we estimate that their ad would show up 88% of the time. They also rank number 1 organically for the term. And even for a direct competitor like H&R Block, we estimated that their ad would show up on some days 100% of the time. And what they also did is they bid on competitors who don't have an app within the App Store. like Free Tax USA. So you search Free Tax USA, you're going to see their ad estimated 94% of the time, but they also rank #1 organically for that term. And I think this is a great example of their seasonal strategy because they started bidding on these terms all the way back in January, right? Because they knew if they built relevancy for these terms early, it would set themselves up for the most success later when tax season hit its peak seasonal time. If you wait for your seasonal event's peak time to bid on keywords, you may already be too late. And so I'm not going to sit up here and lie to you and tell you that I know the secret to being featured, because I don't, unfortunately. But what I do know is to give your app the best chance to be featured, you really have to put your app's best foot forward. Now, I just showcased TurboTax's really successful seasonal strategy, and I don't think it's any coincidence that they were featured a lot and also consistently ranked #1 on a lot of tax-related featurings. So at the very least, if you implement a well-thought-out seasonal strategy, you're at least giving your app the best chance to potentially be featured. So let's do a recap. I told you that TurboTax had a significant share of voice advantage over their competitors. So you search for a tax-related term, more likely than not, you're going to see their ad. I also told you that they recently increased their organic visibility for tax-related keywords. So you search for a generic tax-related term, more likely than not, they're ranking #1 for it. Then if you happen to scroll past both those placements, what are you going to see? You're going to see their featuring in the search results. And I think this is a great example of how they really maximize their app's visibility during the 2025 tax season. And one thing I want you to be aware of is, if a user has your app installed, but you don't have an in-app event live, your app will look like H&R Block says in the search results in the last image. You can see they're being very overwhelmed by TurboTax's creatives. This is because all you can see is their icon and their title. And this is actually how I downloaded TurboTax for the first time this year. I forgot I had H&R Block installed, searched for them, saw TurboTax's ad and said, you know what, I should do taxes myself for the first time. And the rest is history. So at the very least, if you implement an in-app event during a peak seasonal time, you're at least giving your app some sort of brand defense campaign for current users. So I just finished showing you TurboTax's successful paid and organic seasonal strategy. And I think this is important because a lot of my clients I speak to, I feel like their paid and organic teams work in a silo. And I think this is a mistake because there is an opportunity for your paid and organic teams to work together and support each other. So let me give you one example of this. So there's an Apple Ads and App Store optimization growth loop. So how much you bid on a term, in part, will be determined by how relevant you are for that term. And part of that relevancy is determined by your organic rankings. And we kind of know your organic rankings are determined by your velocity of downloads and conversion rate for a term. So you turn on your Apple Ads campaign, you bid on a keyword, your velocity of downloads go up. Then if you leverage a custom product page optimized for that keyword, you could potentially increase your conversion rate. So higher velocity of downloads, improved conversion rate, your organic rankings rise, you become more relevant for that term. That will positively impact your paid campaign, which means more downloads for the same ad spend, higher velocity of downloads, your organic rankings rise even more, and the feedback loop repeats itself. Now, I can't promise that this will happen every time, but this is just one example of why your paid and organic team should be working together during peak seasonal times. And honestly, they should be working together all the time. Okay, so let's go over some successful seasonality examples. What we're seeing here is we're seeing Hollow's share of voice history for the keyword Lent. And Lent is a very seasonal holiday. Essentially, what I'm showing you is when do they start bidding on Lent and how often does their ad show up. And we can see they start bidding on the term roughly around February 5th. And this is well before Lent increases in popularity within the App Store because Hollow knows if I build relevancy early, it will set myself up for more success later. And what we're seeing here is we're seeing the keyword volume history for Lent. Essentially, when does Lent start to increase in popularity within the App Store? And as I just told you, they bid on the term early to build relevancy as early as possible. But as soon as Lent starts to increase in popularity within the App Store, they push live their seasonal campaign. They push live their in-app event, and they update their screenshots. And for their seasonal strategy to be this well coordinated, I would guarantee that they probably had this planned out for months. So no matter what you decide to do, update your metadata, your creatives, push live an Apple Ads campaign, you need the right data for the right strategy for the biggest impact. All right, let's talk about FanDuel's Super Bowl seasonal strategy. Now, the Super Bowl, obviously a very seasonal event, but it has a very limited time window. So if you want to take advantage of it, you really need a well-coordinated seasonal strategy. So let's see what FanDuel does. As soon as the Super Bowl starts to increase in popularity within the App Store, they start bidding on relevant terms. But what they also do is they update their screenshots. But what's most impressive is screenshot number 1, because you're not going to know who's in the Super Bowl until the conference championship games have ended. And they updated their screenshots so quickly after those games have ended, I would bet that they probably had a set of screenshots ready to go for each potential Super Bowl outcome. And what we can also see is they start ranking organically very high for the term Super Bowl with this seasonal update. And as some of you may know, you can only update your metadata with an update to your app. So there's a good chance that they also update their metadata to target Super Bowl with this seasonal update. So let's do a quick recap. The Super Bowl starts to increase in popularity. They bid on relevant terms, they update their metadata, and they update their creatives. And once again, for this to be so well coordinated, they had this seasonal strategy planned out for months. So I'll say it one more time. The seasonal battle is won early. Now, there may not always be a traditional seasonal event to take advantage of in the way we think of them. Sometimes you have to make your own seasonal event. At this point, we all know what Prime Day is, right? It's pretty much a holiday. I have it marked down on my calendar. But Temu decides to take advantage of that. So let's see what they do. What's the first thing we notice? They start bidding on Prime Day early to start building relevancy as early as possible. And the closer we get to Prime Day, the more they increase their visibility. Then about a week before Prime Day, they update their screenshots and up the ante. Instead of 70% off for July 4th, it's 90% off. And instead of Prime Day, it's Temu Week. And I think this is a very clever way to take advantage of a unique seasonal opportunity. So don't be afraid to think outside the box. All right, so let's go over how we're going to conduct our seasonality research. I always like to start by looking at the macro level data first before I get into the specifics. And one great place to start, other than your own app's data, is your category, because that way you can see if you can identify any significant trends, right? And sometimes those trends are going to be obvious. Why does football spike in September each year in the why does the sports category spike each year in the US? Well, football. But also, don't be afraid to look at adjacent categories, trends, and data, because sometimes trends in other categories can help explain the trend in your category. Why does food spike in September? Well, you can't watch football without wings. Now, sometimes category trends will be impacted by general seasonal events. Let's take New Year's Eve, for example, right? At this point, we've all done and given up on a New Year's resolution, but it's no surprise that the health and fitness category sees a spike each January as users are setting goals to improve their health. But we also see a similar spike in the business category. But why is this? Well, what do users care about other than their own health? Well, money. And so they also use this time to set goals to improve their professional career. Okay. Now, the New Year's Eve seasonal event, you're probably all aware of, pretty obvious one. But what if you identify a potential seasonal event that's not as obvious, and you need to convince your boss or client that you want to take advantage of this? Well, this is where I will start looking at the micro level data. I'll see if I can identify any keywords or app that increase in popularities at a specific time frame to see if I can find any data or trends to support my hypothesis. So let's stick with the same seasonal example. If we look at the health and fitness category, in March of this year, what do we see? We see a lot of generic, different health and fitness-related apps. No shocker there. But if we look at the apps with the biggest growth between November and January, we see a lot more health tracking, workout planning type of apps. And if we look at the same thing for the business category, we see the apps with the biggest growth between November and January are a lot more work and side hustle focused. And this is the type of data that you can leverage to make your business case. Now, this is an example that just happened to me recently. I was working with a client who has a design-based app, and they saw like a minimum to moderate spike each year in January. And so we're trying to figure out why. Now, as we just went over, I know in January, business, productivity apps, they all see a spike. So my first thought was, are more people using their app because they're updating their resumes in January? But they didn't rank for relevant terms, and I knew it wasn't the most popular feature within their app. So I couldn't figure it out, decided to take a break and work on my MAU presentation. And as I'm working on my New Year's Eve slide, I start to give it the side eye, because I think, vision board? As soon as I think that, I start testing my hypothesis. I find all the vision board related keywords I can, put them in a keyword list, and look at the impression history over the previous few years. And what do I see? I see a spike each January. After speaking with my client and looking at their internal data, I was able to confirm my hypothesis. And I really like this example because not every seasonal event is going to be this Black Friday, Super Bowl level event, right? Sometimes they're going to be a lot smaller. But if you can identify 3 to 4 of these each year and be efficient with the budget you use to invest in them, this is a type of seasonal strategy that can get us that incremental growth we're all looking for. Now I get it. We may not all have budget for a huge seasonal campaign. But you know what we can all do that doesn't require a lot of time and resources? We can update our organic metadata. And when done properly, it can have an impact. Once again, working with a client who never did a seasonal strategy. They thought their seasonal events were too competitive, right? They didn't have budget for a huge Apple Ads campaign. They couldn't even update their creatives. So I said, hey, let me update your organic metadata to target some relevant seasonal terms. I won't take up a lot of character space. You're not ranking well for every term in your keyword field anyway, so we should do a metadata update. So I target relevant seasonal terms, but I do it early while the competition is low. And by the time this seasonal event hits its peak time, we go from being unranked to ranking between 4 and 6 or some priority seasonal terms. Now, did this have the biggest impact on their app? No. But did it have an impact? Yes. And it was a good business case on why we should expand our seasonality strategy the following year. So if we go back to our vision board example, I'm going to target relevant vision board keywords in my organic metadata in late November while the competition is low. Now, if we're not going to have access, if we're not going to do an Apple Ads campaign, we won't have access to ad variation screenshots. So we're kind of left with all default product page screenshots. And for a major seasonal event like the Super Bowl, yeah, it makes sense to optimize a lot of these screenshots to reflect this very popular seasonal event. But what about a minor seasonal event? Let's go back to our vision board related example. Well, it's true. Some vision board keywords do spike in January of each year. Terms like photo editor and video editor actually still have a higher volume. So would it make sense for us to optimize all of our screenshots to reflect our vision board features because we don't want to alienate users looking for a photo editor or video editor type app? So what I would recommend is updating one of the first 3 screenshots to reflect our vision board value propositions so we can capture users looking for a vision board app. And remember, on Apple, only the first 3 screenshots show up in the search results, so they usually have the biggest impact. The other 2 screenshots, I'm going to keep them generic so I can still capture users looking for a photo editor or video editor type app. Now, I know I went over in-app events, but let's go over them in more detail. So one more time, if a user has your app installed and you don't have an in-app event live, your app will look like H&R Blocks does in the search results in the middle image, right? So enacting an in-app event at least allows you to implement some sort of brand defense campaign for current users. But more importantly, in-app events allow you to showcase your app's unique value propositions for a specific seasonal event for new, current, and returning users. So if you're going to be implementing a seasonal campaign or a seasonal strategy, and if appropriate, I always recommend leveraging an app event. They're a great way to maximize your app's visibility, and they don't require a lot of resources. Lastly, your in-app events can also be featured. But as I mentioned earlier, you have to put your app's best foot forward. The same thing goes with in-app events. You should be consistently refining your in-app event strategy and looking at your internal data to see what works and what doesn't work. And this is important because a lot of clients I speak to, I feel like they do in-app events just to do them. They look at it as like a check off on the list. But like anything within the App Store, you need to be consistently testing your in-app event strategy so you can understand what metadata works, what creatives work, or even what events best work for your app. Okay, so let's go over Apple Ads, and let's go back to our vision board example. What do we notice here? We can see that as vision board becomes more and more popular within the App Store, more and more apps are bidding on relevant terms. Essentially, it's becoming a lot more competitive. But no need to worry, right? Because we've had our seasonal strategy planned out for months. So in late November, we targeted relevant vision board terms in our organic metadata to improve organic rankings and increase relevancy. Because remember, how much you bid on a term will be determined by relevancy, which in part is determined by organic rankings. So we've already positively impacted our paid campaign. On top of that, we already have our seasonal screenshots finalized, ready to go and uploaded at the moment they'll have the biggest impact. Or if we're going to leverage ad variation screenshots, we'll push those live at the same time as our paid campaign. But what about our paid campaign? Well, I always like to look at this historical data first, but for this example, I'm going to start bidding on relevant vision board terms in early December while the competition is low. As vision board becomes more and more popular, I'm going to consistently increase my daily budget. But more importantly, I'm going to be continually optimizing my bidding strategy, either manually or through automation rules, so I can be as efficient as possible with my budget as I can. So by the time that this seasonal event hits its peak time, I've set myself up for the most success as possible. Now, how much you should bid, what your daily budget should be, automation rules will all depend on your app, but you're starting to see how our paid and organic strategies are coming together. Now, I want to go over campaign structure really quickly because I do get this question. Now, we usually recommend the brand, generic, competitor, and discovery campaign, but we always recommend breaking out our seasonal campaigns. This will make it easier to adjust our strategy, analyze the results, report on our impact, or even refer to the data the following year. So for our vision board example, I'm going to make that its own seasonal campaign. Okay, so what about our bidding strategy? Now, the specifics will depend on your app and event, but here are some automation rules that I think could help you out. So first things first, I'm going to look at the historical data. And I'll start by looking at the cost per 1,000 impressions, or CPMs. CPMs can be a great indicator of how competitive a seasonal event may be. Then what I'll do is I'll find all the relevant seasonal terms I can, I'll put them in a keyword list, and see if I can identify when they start to increase in popularity within the App Store. Once I know how competitive the event is, and once I understand how, when it will become popular within the App Store, I'll start to implement my automation rules. The first one will say, as soon as the event starts to increase in popularity, I'm going to start bidding on terms while the competition is low, so I can build relevancy. The second rule will say, as the CPMs increase and as the event becomes more and more popular, I'm going to be consistently increasing my daily budget. But if we're going to be consistently increasing our daily budget during a seasonal time, we have to be sure we're hitting our return on ad spend goals. And I'm going to use these next two rules in combination with the other two rules to do just that. The first rule will say, if I have a keyword that has an impression share between 20 and 60%, is above our minimum conversion rate threshold, but below our max cost per tap bid threshold, I'm going to set a rule to increase that bid. But for that same keyword, if the impression share increases above 80%, but is above our max cost per tap bid threshold, I'm going to set a rule to decrease that bid. This will ensure that these two rules are continually working together to consistently optimize our bidding strategy. So by the time that this seasonal event hits its peak popularity, we have the most optimized bidding strategy in place, which will hopefully give us a competitive advantage over our competitors. So let's go over ad variations. Now, if you remember earlier when I was going over our organic creative strategy for our default product page screenshots, I said we should only update one of the first three to reflect our vision board features, right? We don't want to alienate users searching for other relevant generic terms. But if we have an Apple Ads campaign, ad variations can help us circumvent that issue, right? Ad variations allow us to optimize our screenshots, app preview video, and promotional text for a specific set of keywords we're bidding on. It creates a more consistent journey from what the user searches to the ad they see, which can improve conversion rates, and improved conversion rates can positively impact our paid and organic campaigns. So for our vision board example, for ad variations, they'll allow us to optimize more of our screenshots to showcase more of our vision board related features and value propositions when a vision board related term is searched. So let's go over a real-life success story we have. We were working with our client SoundCloud, and they wanted us to decrease their CPIs and increase their conversion rate for their Apple Ads campaign. So what we did, as always, we started with research, and we analyzed their reviews. And we noticed the same thing being repeated over and over again with their reviews. Users love SoundCloud over competitors because they got unlimited skips on the free version of their app. So what did we do? We created an ad variation. We targeted competitor terms, and we showcased that users get unlimited skips for free. This led to a 58% increase in conversion rate and a 39% savings on ad spend. Why? Because we leveraged ad variations to optimize our screenshots to showcase a feature that would resonate with users who are searching a specific set of keywords. Now, deep links. Deep links allow us to send users to the most relevant in-app feature depending on the ad they saw. It improves the customer journey, right? So if we go to our vision board example, someone searches a vision board term, they see our ad, download our app, and we send them to the most relevant vision board related feature, which can improve user experience, right? And I don't know about you, but I give up on my New Year's resolutions every year. And if I'm downloading a vision board app to help keep me motivated, and it has a bad user experience, I'm going to use that as an excuse to give up on everything. So deep links can be a great way to increase user retention, which is especially important during seasonal events with a very limited time window. Now, the main theme of my presentation has been the seasonal battle is won early. But I get it. Resources can be limited, especially when it comes to creatives. A lot of the clients I speak to, the biggest bottleneck they see is with their creatives. So we have to be efficient with our budget. And when it comes to ad variation screenshots, you don't have to completely redesign them. You can if you want to, but their main purpose is to create a more consistent journey from what the user searches to what they see. And we can do that by just adjusting our default product page screenshots copy and in-app imagery. So for the last time, let's go back to our vision board example. If we look at our hypothetical design app's default product page screenshots, what do we see? We see a lot of generic design-related features and value propositions. But if we look at our vision board ad variation, you can see we've just optimized our copy and in-app imagery for our vision board campaign while keeping the wireframes the same. This will help us save time and resources. But like anything, you need to be consistently testing your ad variation strategy. Okay. So let's go over reporting. So remember when I told you if you identify a potential seasonal event that's not as obvious, you need to convince your bosses and clients that you should take advantage of this, you should look at the micro level data. Well, you should definitely do that. But what if I told you that you could see the impact a seasonal event has already had on your app? Well, I'm happy to announce that AppTweak's incrementality reporting, you can do just that. You can see the downloads and a seasonal event has been responsible for your app, which can help you make your business case. If a seasonal event has already positively impacted your app, imagine what a dedicated strategy could do. Okay, but we've done our seasonal strategy, we've pushed live our campaign, now we have to report on our impact. Or incrementality reporting can help us with that as well. What we can do is we can show you the predicted data of what the predicted data would have been without your seasonal strategy. Then you can compare that to the actual data to see the true impact of your work, analyze the data, refine your strategy, and get ready for the next year. Okay, so once again, my main theme has been the seasonal battles won early. So no matter what you decide to do, whether you decide to update your creatives, your metadata, in-app events, Apple Ads, or you do it all at once, right? You need the right reporting for the right data, for the right strategy to have the maximum impact. App Store marketing has changed a lot over the past few years. What worked a few years ago doesn't work now. We really need a more nuanced and customized strategy for our potential users, and seasonal events are a great way to do that. Also, please make sure your paid organic external marketing teams are working together. That can really help you save time and resources. Last marketing slide, I promise we've done a bunch of new features, including the ability to translate screenshots within AppTweak, which can help us with our seasonal campaigns in different markets. Thank you.